Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the NJAEA Live Pod Squad episode with Nicholas Ferroni. This episode is hosted by the Student New Jersey Education Association. Shout out to all of you. We so appreciate you all being here, and now I would like to invite the co-hosts of the Aspiring Ed PodSquad Podcast, Bianca Nicolescu and Chelsea Berwick, to the stage. Let's give them a big hand.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Before we start, we do just want to give a few thank yous and shout outs. So first of all, we just want to shout out Ida Ferrante and Jamie Valente. Thank you to the both of you for all of your support throughout the year. We really appreciate you. We definitely would not be here tonight without you. And then also to the NJAEA e-board. We have a lot of e-board members in here. Raise your hand. Hi, e-board. And a lot of regular general SNJA members. For everyone in SNJA, raise your hand. Thank you guys so much for being here. We have an amazing chapter here at TCNJ, and thank you to Matt, our president, a senior graduating. We're going to miss him so much. But we have a thriving chapter, and I'm so excited to see everything that we do in the next year.
Yes, and a special thank you to our editor, our videographer, our producer, our everything wrapped into all wrapped up together, Chris Curdo. Yes, let's give him a round of applause, please. From the beginning, he saw our vision, and he has been the person who has been with us every step of the way, making it come to life. And we would not be here without you, Chris. So truly, we appreciate everything that you've done for us and how much you advocate for us. And of course, to our special guest, thank you, Nick, for taking out, time from your busy schedule to come and speak with us today. We hope that everyone benefits from the conversation and that you enjoy the experience. And of course, one last special shout out to Chelsea, because for anyone who doesn't know, she put so much, yes, give her a round of applause. Chelsea pioneered this idea from day one, okay? And this started out as a humongous joke. And now seeing you all standing in front of us, it feels surreal. But she has put so much time and energy into planning and coordinating so many of the logistics to this event, and I'm very grateful to have such a special co-host. So thank you, Chelsea.
And thank you to Bianca. The podcast would not be a thing if it were not for Bianca. Bianca said to me like a year ago, 2 years ago, that she wanted to start a podcast. And I said, well, do you need help like writing questions or inviting people onto the show? And she was like, well, I could have a co-host. And so that's sort of what it turned into. And the first episodes were us on Zoom, like in our rooms, figuring it out. And then it turned into, we have a studio at NJAEA headquarters right down the street in Trenton. And now we have this beautiful set. And of course, Chris, the videographer. So it's turned into so much. So shout out to Bianca too.
Thanks, Chelsea.
All right, Bianca, are you ready to start a podcast?
Oh my gosh, yes.
All right, Chris, count us down. Hi, everyone. I'm Chelsea.
And I'm Bianca.
And welcome back to the Aspiring Ed PodSquad Podcast live at the College of New Jersey. This is so exciting. We're so happy to be here. Thank you to all of our friends and family who are here tonight.
Everyone, please join me in enthusiastically and excitedly welcoming our special guest, Nick Ferroni, to the stage.
Hello. I will be honest, I took the stairs because earlier I chose during the mic test to jump up on stage and my pants ripped. All right. But every veteran teacher has an extra pair of shoes, an extra pair of pants in their car for this very reason. So that's why I apologize. I'm wearing jeans now. Yeah, I couldn't sit through with the rip in the pants. Yeah.
That's so funny. These were on your channel.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks. I wasn't going to share that story, but that's...
I know.
So do you want to take a second and just say hello to everyone and introduce yourself? What do you teach? Where are you joining us?
Absolutely. I just want to appreciate the eye contact because I'm a high school teacher. And I probably will not have to say put away your phone once, which is a nice, refreshing moment for me. But I'm Nicholas Ferroni. I'm in my 22nd year of teaching high school history, humanities, and pop culture at Union High School, which is not Union City, but little northern New Jersey. It's my alma mater. So Union High School, I graduated from in 97. So 4 years as a student, 22 years as a teacher. More than half my life has been in that school building, which is inspiring and depressing at the same time. My mom sends packages to school for me. That's how she knows it. But I grew up in my community. Like many educators, you return to your communities because you want to invest in the community that invested in you. Teaching was not my initial career. I went to Rutgers. I got in because of football, not academically, so don't think that highly of me. But I loved history. I always had amazing history teachers. I always had amazing educators. I loved Indiana Jones, but I did not know what I wanted to do. So after I graduated Rutgers, I was kind of looking for careers, thinking about what I wanted to dedicate my life to. I ended up falling into acting. So I was on a soap opera for about 2 years after Rutgers. At the same time, I was subbing in my old high school. And I will say this with absolute sincerity. Any great teacher will be a great actor. Not all great actors could be great teachers. Every teacher could find a side job because it is performance-based. You have to be a performer to be a good educator. All right, so, and then a job opened up my old high school. I took it over 22 years later. I'm still there. Yeah, so that's my journey.
Well, Nick, that's an incredible story. I did not know about the soap opera. You have a lot of past life experiences, but just to kind of go back to that, I mean, we want to know exactly what led you into the field of education, right? Because we've had guests on the podcast who said that they've known that they wanted to go into education when they were 4 years old. We've had guests, who decided later in life. So what exactly drew you into the field?
It's interesting because if I said I always wanted to be a teacher, I'd be lying. I had great educators, going back to Mrs. Martino, my preschool teacher, and it's just passionate people make you passionate. I loved education, I loved history, I loved learning, but it's not something I thought about. Obviously, because I gave my teachers such a tough time growing up, so I feel like it's karma now that I'm a teacher and my students are now doing that to me. But it's when I was at Rutgers and I loved history, I just remember having a conversation with one of my professors, and he's like, you obviously are passionate. Do you ever think about teaching and coaching? And I was like, I never thought about it. And that's kind of what led me down that road. I honestly, again, in high school, when I talk to my students and ask them what they want to be and they say a teacher, I'm shocked because that would have been the last answer to any question I was ever asked based on that. But it's just, I was very fortunate. I always think we become teachers for two reasons. In spite of a teacher meant we want to be the teacher we wish we had, or because we were inspired by a teacher. I could say with certainty that the latter is more true than the former. There are so many more inspiring teachers inspiring the next generation of educators. So I always feel like that's my reason.
Thank you for sharing that. And that remains true. The amount of aspiring educators that I speak to that say, I had this terrible experience in school and I want to be the one to change that. Or I had this great experience and I want to join that community of educators. So 100% relatable. And I hope that's relatable to, members in our audience too. I'm wondering also that, there's this side of your career that's also on social media. So how did you get involved in advocacy and, posting more on social media as a teacher?
Well, it's interesting. Everyone's like, whenever a teacher shares their concerns or the obstacles, everyone's like, shut up, you knew you were getting into, stop complaining. I didn't know what I was getting into. I didn't know when I saw my teacher painting houses in the summer that they were doing it because they couldn't survive on their teacher salary. I didn't know that the supplies I was using in my classes my teacher bought. I didn't know half of the situations my teachers were going through while they still kept a smile on their face, were so good with the students. And so it's one of those things where you don't realize it till later on. But once I kind of realized, I also didn't experience sexism until I became a teacher. Teaching 78% female. We don't value the work of women. We see it as a hobby. That's why men tend to pursue administration. Ironically, men make up 80% of administration, which is more absurd because that just shows you we value a man's opinion more than we do a woman's opinion. And so all those things kind of led me to just try to be a voice. I came into teaching with a unique social media platform because of the acting and because of that kind of media presence. And then I tried to leverage that to bring awareness and provide spaces for educators, because teaching is a lonely profession. It is. Even though we have our colleagues, we all keep it within. Teachers are so good at even during the pandemic, I always say, we kept smiling and kept going. So everyone thought we were okay and no one thought to check on us, because we're so good at, again, if you're an elementary school teacher, the classroom could be on fire, but you have to go over like, hey guys, just, let's walk to the door, let's get out. You can't go in. It's like we're so good at giving a great persona, even though internally we may be a dumpster fire in a sense. So I've always tried to use my platform. Now my whole mission with my platform is to celebrate teachers, tell teacher stories, continue to share and provide a space for educators, because a lot of teachers, again, it's comical because right now there's probably 1 million teachers online begging for supplies. But it's so normalized that teachers online using things like donor shoes, which thank God they exist, or the Amazon wish list. And most people are so used to it, they don't realize how insane it is that teachers are online begging for supplies, or that 2 out of every 5 teachers work a second job. Like, these are things that I feel like, I always think change starts with awareness. And I feel like the more we put it out there and the more we share those stories, hopefully more people will then buy into supporting us, not because they're a parent, but because they care about their community and they want what's best for children.
Well, we definitely resonate with that message of wanting to celebrate teachers, and that's actually one of the projects that we did at the 2024 NJAEA convention. We just kind of pulled people off the street and said, do you want to tell us your story? Why exactly are you here? Why did you go into education? And the whole point was to sort of celebrate their lives and everything that they've given. So, that's definitely been one of the reasons as to why we started that project too.
Well, that's amazing. And I always say, the news is kind of like Yelp, where it's like whenever someone has a good meal, they don't go and post it. It's only the bad meals. So 99.9% of teachers are killing it, doing an amazing job. But if one teacher makes a bad decision or makes a mistake, then people assume that's the norm, when we know that's nowhere in the vicinity of the truth. And it's frustrating because all I do is meet amazing people. Every time I meet anyone, celebrity, normal person, they find out I'm a teacher, they instantly tell me about the teacher in their life. I've never not met somebody who didn't have a story about, oh, you're a teacher? Oh my God, when I was in 3rd grade, I had this teacher who told me I was, and it's so interesting because I did a campaign called My Favorite Teacher with People Magazine, where I interviewed celebrities about their favorite teachers. We launched it with Matthew McConaughey. And these people who are larger than life, it's so funny when they talk about their teachers because their teachers are celebrities to them. And most kids view their teachers as celebrities, like that's their hero. And interviewing people about their teachers is one of my favorite things to do. I feel like we don't do it enough because I like to think every one of us has that one teacher, or hopefully more than one, who shaped us positively or believed in us. Again, my mom loved me. I had a great family, but she had to love me. She was my mom. I needed that affirmation from my kindergarten teacher, from my football coaches, from people who didn't have to love me or give me that affirmation.
That's exactly right. And, coming into the profession, I think that's something that I've been thinking a lot about when we think about the state of our education system, because teachers in a lot of ways are undervalued. But when you think about it, the amount of lives that are impacted just by, being in those spaces, like spaces of school, learning spaces, is something that reaches everybody in some way, because we're all educated K-12, right? We all go to school. And I just want to talk a little bit more about, other issues within the state of our education. And, I want to hear more about your opinion because, of course, one problem is you mentioned sexism. We mentioned teachers being undervalued. How are these issues impacting your own teaching, because you're a social studies teacher? How does that impact your lessons and what you are doing in your school?
Well, it impacts me in a variety of ways. I do have the luxury of teaching in New Jersey. We have a strong union, so I don't have to be concerned about, again, not that I would ever say the wrong thing, but someone could perceive something as the wrong thing or think you're being political in any sense. And it's like, so I have the luxury of doing that. It's affected me in a sense where it made me reevaluate not only how I teach, but what I teach. I joke with my students all the time, like, the greatest thing about now is you're living through history. The most horrific thing, you're living through history. Yeah, you're living through the experience. My female students and women now have less rights than their grandmothers did. It's like that stuff is so insane on certain levels. When it comes to strategies, I don't know if it's funny because I don't know if kids are changing or I'm changing or I'm not adapting as quickly as kids. But I've definitely focused a lot more on soft skills with my students over the last 5 years because we went so heavy on the tech and things like that I feel like the soft skills, the critical thinking, the creation, the interaction, the collaboration, the adaption, those are the skills that I think will benefit students later on because we push so hard on technology. And it's funny, we're an all or nothing society. Once computers became the thing, that was it. The best computers, the best sites. So I've definitely adapted to changing my methods, to trying new things. Sometimes it's a success, sometimes it's not, but I then learn from it and continue to adapt to it. So when it comes to the the social aspect. It's funny because I say you can't claim to care about children and not support, pay, and resource the people who spend the most time with the largest number of children, and that's teachers and staff. And as educators, my biggest pet peeve is when someone is like, teachers should just teach. They don't realize how stupid of a statement that is, because we wish we could just teach. I wish I didn't have to be a parent. I wish I didn't have to console. I wish we didn't have to provide food because kids come to school hungry. We take on so many roles, which is also problematic because so much expectation has been placed on school, but we do it because we care, that now everything's on the school system to support it. And then people then have the nerve to criticize and attack, when in fact, I wish I could just wake up and not have to worry about my student who's depressed or suicidal or hungry. But we do, because that's why we chose this field.
Especially when you see students every day, right? Like, you spend so many hours with them. And I think those lines kind of get blurred of teacher, counselor, parent, like all these different roles that you have where you're like a second caretaker at that point. And then, the ownership comes back to you of, these were my expectations of you. You didn't fulfill those expectations. So now I'm going to do, as a parent, I don't know what to, attack you in some way. Or
if teachers just taught, students would be traumatized, left behind. It would be horrific. But we have to, in our schools, provide so many resources that we shouldn't have to. Should a student vaping be our problem? No, but we make it our problem because we care about that student's well-being. Mm-hmm. So there's so many things we take on and districts take on that people don't realize, but we do it because somebody needs to do it.
Well, speaking of some of these issues and, the need to stand up and advocate for your students, something that a lot of aspiring educators, I'm sure, are thinking about, and especially early career teachers, they're thinking about that they want to speak up and they want to make their voices heard within the school, but they might be apprehensive if they don't yet have tenure. And so they're scared of pushback from, potentially the community, any parents or guardians, the administration. So what advice would you give to an aspiring educator who's maybe in a student teaching placement, or an early career educator who is wanting to advocate but is a little scared of what pushback might come from that?
And that's a real thing. And it's like, I have teachers, anytime I post something that's bringing awareness, I have so many teachers message me saying they can't publicly like this or share this because they're concerned for pushback with administration or parents, even though what I'm saying shouldn't be controversial. Teachers shouldn't be begging for supplies. Teachers should be supported. These shouldn't be issues. My advice to young educators, you could support educators in a sense without publicly supporting. Like, they don't have to share messages or issues that someone could perceive as a complaint. If I'm working a second job, is your school going to be like, oh, are you trying to complain that you don't make enough money? No, it's like, this is the reality of my life. I would just encourage them to share more stories about the things they're doing in their classroom, to share more positive, to share more. I don't think enough teachers share the amazing work that they're doing and that's happening every single day. You don't have to show your students. Obviously, there's a legal issue there. But just sharing the work and kind of letting their audiences know what it's like, even in a very authentic sense. It doesn't have to be negative. It's like I shared a post that went viral where it was like, hey, today I consoled 3 students. I encouraged the kid not to drop out. I gave food to these. And it's like, this is just a normal day as a history teacher, because that's a normal day. Somebody could be like, oh, what are you whining? No, it's like, this is the reality. So I think there are ways around it. Obviously, I have friends in the South who can't share one thought. I have friends in the South who can't even use donors' shoes because the school won't give them the supplies, but says it makes the school look bad if they're begging for supplies online, which means the school's then forcing them to buy the supplies because they don't want publicly to do it. So it's like, I always get those messages from educators, and it breaks my heart. I just would encourage people to just create a presence online, share the positive stories. Everything I do with my students is positive. Like, if I ever see a teacher making fun of students, it's absurd to me. They shouldn't be in education. But it's just sharing positive words of encouragement or positive experiences, I think definitely will have an impact the same way. Until they become tenured, then they can do whatever the hell they want. No, I'm kidding.
How many years is tenure? 3 years, right? We just have to be
I thought it was 4. Is it 4?
4 years?
Yeah, 4 years and 1 day. Yeah.
4 years and 1 day.
But again, even tenure, people are like, oh, teachers could do. No, you can't do anything. You can't. It's like they assume tenured means you. But it's like most teachers who get tenured too. It's like we still treat our job the same way. We're still Then we don't want to lose that opportunity. But yeah, we don't have the freedom to do whatever we want when you're tenured.
Just gives you a little boost in confidence. That's all. But I think sharing those most authentic stories is exactly how you build awareness, like you were talking about before. So I think that's, the best way to put yourself out there on social media and not have negative messages and still spread awareness to things that you face in your day-to-day, because like you said, that's the truth, and there's nothing wrong with the truth. I'm curious though, did you, when you decided to, go on social media and take a larger social media presence, or perhaps you decided to start posting on Instagram or TikTok, did you ever collaborate with your school administration? Did you have anything where you had to let them know you had to get certain approval for things, or what are the logistics behind, having this presence?
So I teach a history through pop culture class, and one of my activities with my students is we have to create certain TikToks for certain historical events and things like that. I have permission slips. I have parents signed it. I have my administration sign it. I also let them know I would never post or share anything that would make their child look foolish or bad in any way. And so there is some trust that comes with that. But it's interesting. My admin, I always try, because whenever I bring up an issue, or whenever my admin sees me or my superintendent, he'll always be like, I saw your video, it's great. I always let them know, it's like my experience at where I teach, even though there are things we probably need to improve upon, I have a great situation. Half of the stuff I try to bring awareness to is not affecting me directly, it's affecting collectively other educators. So I also let them know, I'm not complaining about our school. I love where I teach, it's my alma mater. It's I'm trying to bring awareness, and they understand that. I just don't know, a lot of other educators don't have the support. I also feel like I do so much good for my school and bring so much positive attention that they're also they know this is kind of good for our district as well. So it is interesting because it is a case-to-case basis, depending on where you teach, the support that you receive or may not receive.
Yeah, speaking about publicizing a lot of these issues and experiences, obviously the reach that you can have on social media isn't everyone who you would want it to reach. There's only so much of a following, that you have, even though your message is something that you want to spread beyond that. So I guess one question that we have for you is, what do you wish the American public as a whole understood about the experience of educators? If you could give them one message, through your social media platform, what might that be?
If they're on one political end of the spectrum, that we're not trying to indoctrinate the kids, that we're not, if we were, they would bring us coffee every day and they would not be on their phones and turn it in. Until that happens, then it's not possible. And I would only have to say the directions once. All right, but it's that we care so much about the students, we care so much about the impact we have, that teachers in schools, again, even as a student, I've never realized, we've never in the history of histories had a fully funded school and a fully staffed building. And I would apply that to every school. Every school never had those situations. And somehow teachers and educators and staff make it work. So my call to action to them would be if we ever provided the support and resources and pay that schools and staff could get, we would be able to perform miracles, because teachers are already performing miracles every day with next to nothing. So if they had resources, if they only had to work one job and focus solely on teaching, there's no limit to the impact we could have. But again, we made it work. When you make something work for so long, people just assume you could continue to make it work with less. And so that's the problem. I wish people knew how much we did and how much we care and what sacrifices we're willing to make. And if they did know that, I feel like they'd be more supportive.
And as you have a lot of experience in teaching, and I think you have picked up a lot of these, tips of how do I speak to parents? How do I share my experience in, that journey? But as someone coming into the field, could you share some of those things that you have learned along the way in interacting with parents and making sure that you tell people about your experience? What are some things that we should look out for that maybe as aspiring educators we haven't experienced yet?
And I want to tell all the aspiring educators, my first year teaching, I thought about quitting every week. I did. It was nothing like Dead Poet Society. Yeah, it was nothing like Good Will Hunting. Nothing like that. And it's that experience, I remember going home every week, calling my mom, Mom, I cannot do this. These kids are going to kill me. I don't know if I could do this. I'm not a good teacher. And she's just stick it out. And it's like anything else. As I got through it, I started to realize, because I went into teaching, first thing I did was solely worry about the academics and the content. didn't get to know my students. Went in day one, this is what we're studying, this is what we're learning. And that was my worst year ever. And then my preschool teacher, Miss Martino, said, that's not how you teach. And she's like, what do you remember about me? I'm like, oh, just how loving you were. And she's like, because I took the time to get to know every one of you. And she said, spend the first week of school getting to know your students. Spend the first week of school calling home to every parent on your free time. And it's like every year since the first week of school, we do activities, but I pull every student in the hallway. You know, how are you doing? How's your school year? You like your classes? What do you want to be? Like just getting to know them. And that 5 minutes with each student, it's been probably 3 days of class. It makes it so much better because now my students know I care, that I actually care about their interest. I know their interest. I took time to get to know them. I call home to parents all the time. And it's funny calling home. I think my mom got one positive call home. Anytime the phone rings and you're like, this is so-and-so's teacher, the parent takes a deep breath, all right? Because they're ready for something bad. So I call home every year. I call them twice a year. And again, it takes 6 hours. It's a lot. But I call home, I talk to them. Why? Because I'm like, I'm here for you. I don't want the first call to be something negative. I'm like, I'm here for you. What do you need? Is there anything I should know? And I just want to develop that relationship because now the parent knows I care about their child and it's not adversarial or it's not confrontational. And that way when I call them, I'm like, you know, Mike's just missing some assignments. Is there anything we need to worry about? It's not like, how dare you? It's, yeah, this is happening. And so those are the two things which will give you the most successful school year ever. Talking, getting to know the students, and starting a positive relationship with the parents. So that way, when there is any issues that you do have to address, the parent knows you're coming from not a, oh, you're a bad parent place, which again, as a parent, if your teacher calls, some teachers can come across as passive aggressive, and the parents, like, indirectly, they think we're telling them they're a bad parent. Well, that's not the case. We're like, we're here for you. Like, what can we do? So my advice to educators would be, you're not as bad as you think you are. All right, your first year especially, you'll learn your footing, and to develop those relationships with kids because it'll change your entire teaching experience.
I think doing that work on the front end, even though you said it takes 6 hours, that's a good chunk
saves you
of time.
months on the back end.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, which I think some people don't think about. They didn't realize immediately. So I'm glad you shared that. I went to one professional development one time, and I think his name was TJ Belasco, had shared one story about the DOT project, which was also a similar idea, where like at faculty meetings, teachers would come together, of course, with each department, and they would have a dot for every student. So each dot was labeled with the student's name, and they would kind of circle the dots whose the teachers could say, I know that student, I have a really good connection with that student, I know how to support them. They feel like I am a trusted adult. And then once you're looking at this visual, you can see, hey, these are the dots, these are the students who no teacher says that they have a connection with them. And why is that the case? You know, why is so-and-so, why do they not have a trusted adult? Or why is no teacher saying that they have a connection with them? And in doing those sort of projects, this presenter was like, you know, encouraging us to make sure that every student has someone in the building, in the school building, that they can come to. And he was saying how important that is for supporting students. And it reminded me when you talked about phone calls, like calling parents at the beginning of the school year, reminded me of the STOP project that I learned about.
But again, to elaborate on what you just mentioned too, it's interesting because some teachers have 30, 40 kids in a class. It's tough to do that. I mean, counselors in our school have 250 kids. And it's like, and that's because that's what the National Counseling Association recommends. How is it humanly possible to actually counsel 250 kids? It's not. And it's like those situations, like if class sizes were smaller, it's funny because you always have people push back, well, there's no study linked to show class size equates to academic performance. But every study shows that relationships improve academic performance. If you have a big class size, there's no way you could develop a meaningful relationship. And the same thing applies for school staff. It's like if you have 150 kids you have to worry about, there's no way you can focus on all of them and care about all of them at the same time. And I feel like if a kid goes through an entire day without a teacher even acknowledging them, they may be mad at the teacher, but I also feel like it's not the teacher's fault in most situations, because if there's a classroom of 40 kids, it's impossible to spend time with each student.
I think that's such a real issue now
Yeah.
because we have such a big shortage. And I feel, at least in our high school where I'm student teaching, they're not hiring new teachers. They're just upping class sizes, which, yes, they're saving money, I suppose, but students don't feel as though, they have a connection with the teacher.
Yeah. And that's another thing I always say whenever I do any press is, if I was a parent and I found out my child's teacher was working 2 jobs in order to survive, I would be at every board meeting. If I knew my child's teacher was in a classroom of 40 kids and was not being able to provide my child with the attention, I'd be at every board meeting. And those are the things. If I knew my teacher was begging for supplies, I would be at every single board meeting. And that's where, again, you don't have to be a parent to care about those things. You live within the community. Most of you are going to move to different neighborhoods depending on the school system. Public schools are the foundation and center of every community. And it's frustrating because I don't think people value them that way. Some people see them as just babysitting, just a place to drop kids off, but they're literally the center for every major community.
Yeah, and just to go back and to speak to the importance of relationships with students, we actually had a similar conversation on a podcast that we filmed with the Balancing Act podcast, and Jamie had this really great tip, and we loved the term that she used for this. She said that she, really makes it a priority to stand outside of her door in the hallway when, kids are coming in the morning and when classes are switching, and she calls that her porch. She's sitting out on the front porch and she's saying hi to everyone, she's waving, she's seeing who's walking by. So we love that little tip, and that's definitely important. And I think the thing that I took away from her tip with that is that she's focusing on those positive interactions. And so that's what we're talking about too. And I guess what we want to hear from you as well is, what are some of the most positive, memorable experiences that you've had in the school and with your students?
It's so funny because I always say, teachers are people who celebrate the success of other people's children. Nothing makes us happier than seeing our kids going on to be confident, successful, to do what they want to do. Because of my platform, I've had great opportunities for students. So things that stand out, for example, I had a student, African-American, wanted to be a photographer, came to me one day, he's like, are there any black photographers? I said, there are plenty. Obviously, they're not represented as fairly as white photographers are. So I was like, do you have a camera? And he's like, no, I got him an old camera. So he started taking pictures his senior year. Started to get really good. This magazine wanted to put me in it. So I said, can I pick the photographer? So I gave him a shot. They're like, sure. I sent them his portfolio. I told them he was 20, even though he was 17. His parents were aware. And so he took the photos and they said, these are great. So by the time he was a senior in high school, he had like a national publication credit. He's now working and running a studio in New York City. And it's like, those are the things, again, a female student who wanted to be a rapper. I had her for history. I had her write raps about history. She had her first song on Hot 97. She used to thank me for letting her do it. She was getting an A in my class and failing every other class because I took the time to find out something she wanted to do and pursue it. And so those are just like like any opportunity of a kid coming back. And it's funny, I always joke around, I think elementary school teachers should be sainted because I have the luxury of I saw 2 of my former students came up, they're like, oh my God, Mr. Ferroni, here at TCNJ. But it's like, I always feel like elementary school teachers have to be patient for a variety of reasons, but we don't know if they did a good job until 20 years later or 30 years later when we see how well the kids turned out. But me, I have the luxury of seeing them go on to do things. I was godfather for one of my former students. It's like just things like that it's just, again, one of my colleagues going to one of his students' weddings tomorrow. And it's like, we just don't realize those things. But it's like, I have students who I've known now, who I call my little brothers, for like 20 years. And it's one of those things that just kind of fills your cup. And I was talking to Juan earlier. It's funny because I have so many students who, when they see me after they have me, they're like, oh my God, I loved you so much. And I'm like, they were my biggest headache. I'm like, I thought you hated me. And it's like, I thought you hated my guts. And it's like, no, you're my, and he's like, I just was going, and I'm like, no, he's like, thanks for never giving up on me and stuff like that. And it's like, those are the ironies. It's like having 150 little brothers and sisters whose papers you have to grade, unfortunately. All right.
Those are such funny stories. I can also remember so many, just thinking about, oh my gosh, I really miss this elementary school teacher. Just thinking back to all of the teachers that impacted me from elementary school to high school. So what I'm wondering also, You are an amazing teacher, okay? You advocate for your students. As you said, you show up for your students.
You haven't met a lot of my students this year, have you? No, I'm kidding. It's been a tough year. No, I'm kidding.
It seems like the ones who have grown up, right, and you have this special connection. It's almost like they're like extended family. So I'm wondering, back to this Balancing Act podcast, because this is an important episode for us that's coming out. But Jamie mentioned a different idea, which was, that every teacher has something that they do in their classroom that they would sell tickets for. Am I saying that right? If so, I'm wondering, what is something that you do in your classroom with your kids? It doesn't have to be like a lesson that you have done, but what is something that you do with your students that you would sell tickets for, and that is something core to your classroom?
My jokes alone, I think, are worth. And it's funny because I'll have students come, they'll come visit my class 6th period who I have 2nd period, and they're like, you said the same joke 2nd period. I'm like, you think I come up with new material every period? I'm like, by 6th period, I know it works. I know it's actually funny, but I do. A lot of my attention as an educator came from social experiments I did in class with my students. I remember being in college and seeing the brown-eyed, blue-eyed experiment with Jane Elliott. She was a white woman in the 1970s who convinced her elementary school students who were predominantly white in 1968 based on their eye color, and showed how kids treated each other differently when they were told that kids with blue eyes were better than kids with brown eyes, which, again, obviously was such a powerful experiment. I don't think it could be done today, but it was just a very revealing experiment about how race is obviously something that's learned. And so when I became a teacher, I'm like, I want to try to find ways to get my students to experience things. So we were studying the Constitution and government. So I did an experiment where I set up the classroom. I told my students they were voting on new school policies. I picked 18 girls from our feminist club, and I picked 6 of my students who were the biggest, toughest football players, boys. So 18 girls and 6 boys. Congress was 80% male and 20% female. I wanted to see how boys would react when the script was flipped. And so I wrote up fake policies that were all very anti-boy. And I wanted to see, and I let them believe, I told them we were recording it for the Board of Ed, so that's how we got by on recording it. I led them to believe that if the majority of people voted for these policies, they were going to become actual policies. And the boys, within the 3rd one, they started to flip out, calling it a male prison, this is sexist. And it's like, but they got the experiment. They then realized, I'm like, why is it unfair? Because 80% of girls, they can't tell us what, and at the same time, you could do that experiment for people from marginalized communities, people from minority groups, because when you're not part of the majority group, it's like you see things so differently. You assume that everyone has to see it your way. And then the other one we do, which is still my favorite one, is, again, how do I get my kids to care about the Declaration of Independence? Which, again, regardless of problematic issues, we talk about the group of people from that period, signing it was treason. So do my students care about anything that much? So I have my students create a list of things they want to change about the school. We sign it. I pretend to deliver it to my principal. I then come back and tell them that, you guys are gonna get suspended if you keep your name on here. But these are things you really believe. If we don't keep our name on it, then they'll never happen. And then I have my principal come down and threaten taking away prom and graduation, all that stuff. We do it in one day because obviously I don't want them calling their parents and flipping out, all right? But it's like seeing the kids kind of be put in a situation. Again, then we write about, obviously, what does it mean to sacrifice for something? Especially in the future, they're going to be activists. They're going to be active for some social cause. So those are things I think are worthy of, you don't even have to pay for a ticket. You can watch them online at this point now, yeah.
I would like to see a TikTok video of that one day.
Those sound awesome. Those are some great ideas. I'm sure, a lot of our audience members and listeners have been learning from a lot of what you said. And we want to talk a little bit more about your experience in learning. And this question actually comes from one of our audience-generated questions. We had the QR code up there on the screen before the show. And a lot of people submitted questions. And so this was an excellent one. And I think it applies to a lot of people in this room. And so their question was, what was the most important thing you've learned from a cooperating teacher that you still value today?
The most important thing I learned is that there's no formula for a great teacher. Every teacher does things greatly in a different way. Observing my colleagues is one of the best experiences I've ever had because everyone does things differently. They highlight different things, their strengths, they have different strengths. And I think the best thing I've got from my cooperating teachers is that there's no perfect formula or perfect equation to how to be a great teacher. Every one of you has a different skill set. You're passionate about different things. I have some educators who will never do social experiments, but they're amazing at this. And then another teacher is amazing at that. And so I just feel like cooperating teachers are great because they're all have distinct personalities. They all have their own strengths, and they all do things. Again, I'm a good teacher. I'm not the best teacher in my school because there's so many educators doing amazing things that I witness, and I wish we could have a camera in there because they are worthy of an entry fee to see them. But just don't try to be any teacher you're not. I tried to be John Keating from Dead Poets Society. Did not work out. All right? But it's like that's what I thought a teacher had to be. So there's no real direct path to being an amazing teacher. You have to find out what your strengths are and try to focus on those, but improving things that you may not be as good at.
And you just sparked an idea in my head. In addition to maybe those 6 hours of parent phone calls, when you enter a school community, a great idea could be like during free blocks or blocks that you have prep periods to go and observe your colleagues and like sit in on their classes and try to learn more about, where is the school community at right now? And like,
we used to have to do that, but now because of our teacher shortages, we all have to cover on our prep periods. So now we can't do that. Yeah, but it's like, again, observing my colleagues was one of the best experiences because I got this, I took away, again, we're not an island. Like I wish we had common planning times during the day where I could sit and be like, what are you doing? Do you like this activity? Or bounce ideas off them. And it's funny, every school knows they should do it, but we don't have the opportunity to do it.
Well, that's some great advice that there's not just one formula, and I'm sure a lot of our aspiring educators who are in their practicum experiences and clinicals, it's very easy to compare yourself to other people, right? But that gets you nowhere because everyone is individual. You're your own person. So that was a great tip. I think we're nearing the end of our time, but if you want to leave our audience and viewers, with just one last piece of advice, what would you, tell our audience members?
Directed towards future educators or... my last bit of advice, regardless of what you see in the media, regardless of what you hear, regardless of any of my videos that are talking about issues we're dealing with, it's still one of the most rewarding professions there is. I can't imagine I would do anything else. I would never leave the classroom because that experience, I could never be an administrator. The experience, my kids keep me coming back. And like I was talking to Juan earlier, it's like my students give me hope every single day. They're better than I was when I was their age. And that always provides me with hope. But just understand that it's tough. Teaching gets easier. It's never easy. But it's something that if you're there for the right reasons, you'll get through it. The good news is by the time you do start teaching, hopefully starting salary will be a lot. The pay scales will be better. So I can't complain about the money I make because my mentor teacher started making $5,000 a year in 1970 something. So the job's getting better. I do honestly have hope that regardless of what's happening federally, that the people in the schools, in the communities will continue to fight and do the right thing because we know this is a fight worth fighting. So my advice would be, don't change your mind. Give it a try. Don't get frustrated. Don't quit. If you don't like where you are, find a district. We lose so many amazing teachers because they're not in an environment that's beneficial for them, or they're in a toxic environment, which happens. So go to another school before you decide to switch careers or change careers. But it's definitely a career worth pursuing, and I promise you there'll be plenty of opportunity ahead, obviously plenty of job opportunity, but I feel like in the long run, you'll be happy you made that choice.
I cannot thank you enough for saying that because the amount of teachers that I've encountered in school saying, discouraging me from being a teacher, definitely outweighs the amount of teachers who have said, yes, go do that.
Now, if you pull me aside privately, I'm like, no, go into finance, make your money. Yeah, go into finance, make a lot of money, then go back and be a teacher. Yeah.
Good to know. No, but thank you for this conversation, Nick. I know that we're, ending our time here, but this has been a really meaningful conversation for Chelsea and I hope for all of you too that you have learned something from this. And this was, I saw your hand that this was something you're happy you came out to. But yes, thank you. Thank you for making time for us and for coming here today.
Well, thank you. And just one of the things I'm working on, May 19th, if you watch CBS, I'm working with CBS. We surprised 5 teachers around the country. We're going to have them all in Times Square, and we're going to unveil their stories. There is a Teacher Hall of Fame. It's in Emporia, Kansas. Many people don't know that. It doesn't get the same attention the other Hall of Fames do. But we surprised 5 teachers who are inducted into this year's class in the Hall of Fame. And again, if I could ever help support any of you who are pursuing education, shoot me a message. Whatever you need, I'll gladly help. If you ever want to observe any teachers or any grade levels, I could help make it happen. But just, again, thank you so much. I decided that I'm not taking a sick day tomorrow. I still have enough energy. Yeah, I was like, can we do it earlier? I'm like, that's how you know you're not new teachers, because if they were teaching, you're not sacrificing sleep for anything. Yeah. It's like, oh, you want to go on the trip? No, I need my 8 hours of sleep. So, but my students will have a nice, easy day tomorrow. They don't know it yet.
Well, thank you, Nick, for sacrificing your sleep for us. We do appreciate you. For everyone watching at home, be sure to check out our Motivational Monday episodes we're on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts at NJAEA _. And be sure to check out our Thursday episodes that release with our guests, and this will release on a Thursday. So thank you again, Nick, so much. We really appreciate you.
Is this going to release before May 19th? Because then that kind of wipes that out right there. No, I'm kidding.
We'll see, maybe.
We'll try our best.
All right.
All right. Thank you. We'll see you next Thursday.
Thank you, TCNJ. We really appreciate you. Thank you guys for being here.